It's Claris Talk AI. We have Chris Light,
Hey, Matt.
Ronnie Rios, our regular AI expert, and then special guest today, we have Michael Wallace. Welcome, sir.
Oh,
Hello.
so excited to have Michael here.
So,
Rising star in the FileMaker and AI community. Really
Absolutely.
happy to have Michael here.
yes, and I just met you, Michael, and I'm excited. So, you have a free utility you can download from your website, and I downloaded it and I've been playing with it, and I'm like crazy impressed to the point where I just went in and spoke like I was still in the 80s. Wicked. Oh my God. um, I think we should see it. Show your screen. For those of you listening, you're going to want to really watch this one on YouTube, uh, and we'll see what this does, and then we could talk about how you made it because I'm so impressed.
All right. This is Empowered Agents, named after the company Empowered Data Solutions. And so when you come in, you'll be on this screen and you can just click this button to start the agent. Hello, how are you doing today?
I'm functioning perfectly, ready
Hmm.
to tackle any tasks or questions you have.
All right.
What's on?
I would like
Great.
to know, can you give me the top five companies by the total dollar amount ordered for 2024?
Transferring.
Yep.
Oh,
There you
damn.
go. Let
Wow.
me know if you need anything else
All
analyzed.
right. Yeah, actually, I'd like to see this as a bar chart, please.
So for the audio listeners, a window just popped up. It analyzed something in the database by magic we'll learn about, and shows the numbers on the screen. And now presumably we're going to see a chart.
Yeah,
Is this
generated a
a web viewer?
custom window.
Yeah,
They
this
all must be web viewers, yeah?
it is WebViewer.
Yeah.
And I think that we interrupted it whenever it was thinking stuff. So
Yeah,
it
settle
probably is
down, Matt.
Oh, was it
we have
listening
to,
to me? I thought it
it
only
actually
listened to
listens
you.
hears you too. So let's see if we can you give me that data as a bar chart?
Thinking. Oh,
There we go.
wow.
Whoa, even
Now I
animated.
can mute it. I put a little button, so if I click on this, then it on the agent, then it mutes it so it doesn't talk and it doesn't listen to me. So that's what I do in between times
Just
whenever
like my wife.
My wife wish. Well, see,
Couldn't.
my wife has that for me because all she has to do is look away because she's deaf,
It works
and
for
so she like looks
Oh, now
away,
I
and I'm like,
feel
oh, come on, that's not
terrible.
fair, you know.
Oh my God. I'm just gonna
This is so funny.
I'm done. That's it for me. Sorry about that, everybody. But heck, sincerely, what we're looking
This
at
is
here,
awesome.
we've got a couple of FileMaker windows that were dynamically generated based on the instructions that Michael was giving to the agent. Super impressive. And then the visualizations are gorgeous, and animations as well. Um, this is an agent experience in FileMaker. This is some pretty amazing stuff that we're
Yeah,
seeing here.
but it's way more than just like questioning your data. You can ask it questions about the structure of the
Mhm.
database. Yeah, show some other sweet things that it can do,
All right.
if you would, sir.
Give me the table of contents for the help for this file.
Here's the table of contents for the help file. Let me know if you want to dive into any
You
specific
didn't
section.
show it. Go ahead and show me the table of contents.
Wow.
There we
Boom.
go. So, um, and then I can ask for about specific things. So, give me more information about extending this file.
That should give you a good overview
Outstanding.
of how to extend the
So we're
system.
seeing we're seeing
Yeah.
the window pop up with all the information, now this is information I'm assuming you're storing internally
Yes.
as metadata, or there's table information or something like that. So what break down for people what happened from a FileMaker sense if a human were to do this. Let's talk
Okay.
about how many steps that you just eliminated from you having to do to be able to do this.
Well, for example, when you're working with doing the charts, for example, it's doing multiple steps because it's not just a single agent. it's actually multiple agents. So I have the primary agent I call Empowered Core, and it has a tool that's called Call Agent. And so it will, I delegated other things like getting the data and charting to separate agents. And so when I asked for that information, and I can do it all in one thing. If I said up front, give me a bar chart with such information, it would make a call. It would use the tool to call the agent to get the data. That agent, and it makes its own prompt for that second agent. So it has a prompt that it creates, and it prompts a second agent with what it wants. That second agent takes that prompt and processes it, makes a SQL, uses its tool. For the data retriever, I actually have like find existing SQL and execute SQL, or what I have turned on right now. And so find existing SQL is a table of prompts and SQL queries that it does a semantic ones that I've kind of proven, and it does semantic search for the prompt, compares it to what they asked, finds something that's similar, and uses that as a grounding point, and then makes a SQL call with the execute SQL statement. I'm passing in the get DDL information to give it all the information about the database that I want it to have to execute the SQL. So then it makes that call, pass that information back up to the empowered core. That then calls the charting agent with the information that it received from the data retriever, and the data retriever creates the chart, shows it, and lets the calling agent know that it's done. So it bounces back and forth with tool calls and with everything like that to get everything done that it needs to do. And even though, one quick thing about it is that even though the primary agent and Empowered Core use the real-time preview, which can be kind of expensive, most of my work is done with those sub-agents. And so it's not using the primary agent as much, and I also limit how much it speaks, because speaking costs more than just displaying the data.
Yeah, so for those, that the real-time API is what Michael is using to do that really, really cool voice interface that you can interrupt it and everything. It's called the real-time API. And it is more expensive, but Michael did a fantastic job here with kind of splitting it up. Let's just use it just for the user experience. All the hard work of like doing all the tool calls and SQL and stuff. Let's offload that to cheaper. Cheaper
and I'm sure it wouldn't be a big deal to switch it to a text input if you didn't want the voice, right? So
right,
yeah,
exactly.
I mean, the real-time agent is just driving the voice anyway, so you really just need that at the one that's interfacing with the user.
It's all the layers.
Let's back up a second though. We can't just assume that everybody listening even knows what we're talking about when we say agents. So let's go to the very top of this and talk about what this is, how it's happening. It's incredible what you guys are hearing and seeing. This is the interface of the future. It is. Let's talk about determinism. How about we throw that topic out there?
You're going to go back to philosophy.
That's right. Maybe I'm extracting a little bit too much from philosophy there, but. What all of us have done in our FileMaker careers for many, many, many years is take requirements, build out those requirements in order to meet the goal. So what we do, we hear our customers, or if it's ourselves that are building something for what we're doing, we think about what the outcome needs to be. And what's the first thing that we think about doing? We plan how we can actually use the tools that we have at our disposal to solve for that. Then we'll go in and we'll actually do, in our case, we don't really call it programming in FileMaker, but we'll go in and we'll do our development. And at some point when we test everything and it looks great, then users who told us what the problem was are able to go in and begin the process and get some feedback or an outcome from the FileMaker system that we create. So interestingly enough, over time, we have been the agents for our customers. Now, I'm kind of using that metaphor to describe what it's like to be the third party building something. So if you really think about the user, they're telling us what problem they want to solve. We go build this thing for them, and then it eventually shows them the answer. So that is not unlike what is happening here. Ronnie, I'll let you talk a little bit about how this is the same process, but now the agent is actually doing that for us.
Yeah. So agents, there are different definitions out there. The one that I really subscribe to is that agents are it's a system where it's leveraging large language models to dynamically direct their own path, the process that they're doing, leveraging the tools and resources that are available to them, working off of a loosely defined objective, and independently they're able to operate, plan what they're going to do, and determine when they're done. So to me, that is the definition of an agent. And there are agents of all different sizes, right? There are very small agents with little tools, with little processing power, and there are others that are very massive ones where you can actually have a network of agents working as a single one. But they all have the same structure, the kind of the same principles, right? Loosely defined input, dynamically used tools and resources available to them, be able to inspect the environment and which has changed, determine what path they want to take, and they're able to determine when they are done independently.
Yeah, you and I subscribe to the same definition, and it's really it's oh, you don't? Okay, Matt, what's your definition of agents?
I can't remember that. I heard a podcast about it. It was
And then
really
we'll tell you
interesting,
if
but I
you're
think
right
it
or not.
summarized it. Well, you wouldn't know, would you? It summarized it as basically it can operate autonomously in a complex environment with complex data.
That's not a definition of an agent.
Because that's fine then.
The key part
I think
of,
that's
of
a
what,
much looser. It's a very high look down, because I think agents, like what you're just defining, Ronnie, is very much what we just saw. But we didn't see a couple things in Michael's demo yet, like the ability to go to layouts, enter data, create records, delete records, stuff like that. So,
well, those are just the
doing
different tools that
things.
are available. Yeah,
Right,
it doesn't matter. Like, it just so happened that what his problem statements were didn't involve those CRUD actions, right? So, but the key part about what Ronnie was talking about is how it bookends, how it can create the plan and then reflect upon the plan. And that actually is a really important part about this, because what we're seeing here today was not possible in GPT 3.5. And the reason was because there's this concept of reflection that really came out in the maturity of the frontier models, specifically in the GPT-4, which was like, what, 2 years ago now? Yeah. And so what it was able to do is, and actually you've seen this, for those of you that have worked with GPT or ChatGPT or any of the other models before, a pro tip, by the way, is when you ask it to do something and it appears that it's done something, if you simply say, okay, audit yourself or validate that you did that task correctly. In models prior to GPT-4, it really wouldn't be able to reflect upon what it was doing. But then it just sort of got this like compressed intelligence at that level up, where now, and even now with the more mature models in 4.0, you can say, did you do that thing? And then it goes, oh, you know what? Actually, I didn't. Now that I'm looking back on it, or it can validate that it did. It's that one reflection piece that literally was the epicenter of the explosion of agents within LLM. So that's why Ronnie and I are right when we come up with our definition, because agents really emerged and they were birthed at that moment in time in the evolution of LLMs. Now, that was a couple years ago now. I think most people in the AI space came into the year 2025 saying, this is the year of agents. Now, like, Michael, what's your take on why 2025 was the year of the agents? I mean, we've had GPT 4.0 since back in 2023, right?
Well, I mean, I think that it just kind of dawned on people with the, function calling has been around, a little bit longer than that.
That's a huge point too.
It just kind of, people go, wow, with the function calling, it's choosing what tool to use, which means we can just take this to the next step further and let it continue to do that until it gets the response. So
and that's like what Matt was talking about. Like, a function could be one of the CRUD operations. It could be running in FileMaker, could be running a script, which, by the way, is a important part about why this is so cool in FileMaker. And so all those things come together. So really, I think if we take an amalgamation of what we've been talking about here, the definition of agents is being able to plan for itself and reflect upon that plan, and then to keep going. That's where the autonomy comes from, Matt. So like, that was a big part of it there as well too. But then having tools available, having tools dynamically available too. So it's kind of like, hey, agent, here's all the stuff that you can use to solve this problem. And and then have at it. Here's the problem. So you go figure it out. So that's really at its core what all these crazy things are doing. And I think from a consumer standpoint, even though we're going to dig back into what you guys are doing with this in FileMaker, for those of you that have ChatGPT or any of the different IDEs, if you've ever done a deep research, first of all, that's my favorite new AI thing that has evolved from all these different model front ends. But if you do a deep research and you hit the little button, for example, and you hit details, you'll see that it's sitting there talking to itself. DeepSeek actually really kind of came out and they did a really verbose job of the thinking part and showing the thinking. And if you see what those things are, what it's saying, it literally will go, okay, well, the user said that they wanted to do this, so maybe I should think about this, that, and the other thing, or maybe I should do a web search, or I should probably pull in it's like the going through all the tools it has, doing its plan, and then it executes on the plan, and then later you can see it reflects on it, kind of like what we're talking about.
It reflects all the whole way through. It's like, I think this is this.
Yeah.
Let me see if that fits. No, okay, I'll
It's
try
amazing.
another thing. Yeah. I love watching it.
By the way, Ronnie, you and I were just talking about this yesterday. Gemini just released a random tool this past week called oh God, what is it called? Like Gemini Thoughts or something, thought details, or I can't remember.
Summarizes
Summaries.
the,
There we go.
yeah.
Thought summaries. Yeah, it's thinking summaries. It's actually exactly what we're talking about. Like you can actually extract all the thought processes, and I was just so fascinated by that because if you could take what the problem statement was and then extract the whole thing, you could actually use that as a knowledge base or train on that even. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And so now, Michael, what's your take as to why FileMaker is so perfectly suited for this?
Oh, man, I've been did some of the training and the certification stuff for what is it? Hugging Face for agents like that, and you get into that and working with Python and everything, and you have to do so much work to get what we already have in FileMaker. And where with FileMaker, I mean,
we'll talk about that though. Dig in because that's a really important point here.
So security, and you have the access of what you want to give it, and the scripts. I mean, what the biggest takeaway for me for all of this is that a tool for an agent is a script in FileMaker. So anything a script can do, an agent can now do, because you give it that ability to run that script. And now if it's going to check your email or any kind of API call or interact with Claris Connect or whatever it is, all of that can be done now by an agent autonomously to decide to when to do that. And
that's a big deal. So
That's a huge deal.
I love that you mentioned Connect. So just to double click on a couple things that you said there, Michael. So first off, a tool could simply be like, go search the web or send an email or create a record or whatever. So not only in FileMaker do we have the ability to create a sequence of tool use with logic, logic, and we'll appease Matt here, complex logic as well too. You can actually then have that entire script. So that's really a sequence of tools, but you can then have the whole sequence, a script, be a tool in and of itself. Now, then you extend that even further, and you said something really interesting to Claris Connect, which is a series of tools between utilities and different connectors that you could sequence as well too, but you could treat them independently as tools or the entire flow as a tool, and then you combine that together with what FileMaker's doing, and it really is like this tool amalgamation and sequencing platform if you kind of look at it that way. So that really brings a huge advantage.
One would almost call it a platform, right?
Yeah,
that makes applying AI a lot easier, right? To have, and it's funny because Michael, one of the things that we were talking about at Engagers is exactly that, right? Using these AI tools shouldn't be hard. It should be very easy. Creating these, you did a fantastic job, by the way. Looking at his code, Michael is a freaking superstar.
Yeah.
Creating the agents. I mean, creating the agents. In of itself isn't too hard. You can create small agents that are fairly easy, but have it working efficiently under security, having the automation, having all the structure, all the data available to it. Like those things we believe are really hard, right? To bring in one place. And I think Michael, that was what we were talking about this last week during office hours as well, where we were saying, We sometimes don't know how easy we have it here, right?
Yeah.
Right? Because we're building on top of this platform.
It's basically it's almost acting like a human, essentially, like an assistant. So you're asking for something like go do this thing, and then you sit back and put your feet up, and it does it like a human would do it. And it's like an assistant. The people like ask kind of what AI is, and I tell them it's kind of like having 1,000 interns. They're gonna
Yeah.
they're gonna do things really fast because there's 1,000 of them, but they're not going to be as smart as you are. You have to give them really specific advice, and if they get it quite a little bit wrong, you have to ask again, be more clear. This is really like that. This is really like the whole experience of using like ChatGPT 4.1, except with your FileMaker database.
Right.
And that's nuts. And this is the beginning
It only gets
of it.
better, right?
Yeah.
This is
And
the
this
worst
is
it'll
the
ever be.
worst.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. This is the worst it'll ever be. Jinx.
Yeah, that's
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 a funny way
my
to put
favorite
it.
new term, by the way. I think Sam Altman just sort of came out and said that last week about the models, and to think about AI at any given time, it is the worst that'll ever be. There's something else really interesting. Matt, I also listen to podcasts, and there's this great one that I heard some VC founders actually talking about the way to vibe coding. If we kind of take this out of sort of agents for just a second and think about another value for the platform, is that they were talking about, okay, yeah, you can go in for like whatever the Claude version was at the time, and you can vibe code out an entire web application. Well, you're done in that AI environment. You have to now do something with that code. You have to find a server environment. You're going to need a database backend. You're going to need user management. You're going to need security, scalability, and all the management of the uptime and monitoring of all that. And what they were saying in this podcast, these are a bunch of tech VCs, they said that they feel that the vibe code part of that is really just the 30% of what it really takes to go from idea into deployment. So the real heavy lift is all that infrastructure that exists. And Ronnie, you can speak better than anybody on this. I mean, that is what the platform part of the Claris platform really is. So you take all the different tools, the fact that we can sequence tools, the fact that everybody in this industry has been using tools and sequencing tools forever, all that together with the platform to be able to deploy these things, really all you're needing then is just a user with some input. And then that the user becomes the person who's interacting with the agent. It's really just amazing stuff. And yeah, I think people are probably a lot closer to being able to do this than they think they can. And the good news is, Michael and Ronnie. Well, Ronnie, actually, hold on a second. Let's not leave Ronnie out. So anybody that went to Engage saw your version of this as well too. What has become of that file?
Oh, that you're gonna have me go after Michael. Actually, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Talk about sequencing.
Anything that you saw from me, I stole from Ronnie. So this is,
That's not true. That's not true. But yeah, and of course, you've seen me work over
Oh man, yeah.
these for over 2 years, right? We started very
Well,
small with just
but
kind
that's
of
an important
SQL
part of
stuff.
it, Ronnie. Talk about where it started first before it even became an agent, because you were kind of creating the need for it, and then all of a sudden, real-time API became available. The sort of the agent
Yeah.
framework. It was your story is really interesting because of the evolution of it. Take us back to the beginning.
Yeah, well, similar to you, like I gained access to OpenAI's API very early on. I signed up. It was like before they to pre-release or something like that, and
Mhm.
started playing around with it, and saw some, it's like, well, how do I bring this into FileMaker? How do I leverage this to bring like really amazing user experiences? And so, the obvious thing is talking with your data and things like that, and generating SQL, executing SQL, and things like that. So it started just like, let me see if I can answer questions, right? The user asks a question, generate the SQL, and answer the question there. And that became a thing. I saw like immediately there was a need for trying to create some structure behind it and things like that. And I remember creating, this was over 2 years ago, creating like my own little function calling type of structure behind it. And then I remember like 2 months later, they come out with function calling and the API and everything. But this has been my little experiment, going forward, just so I can understand what our users are going to be asking for as these tools get better and better,
Mhm.
and what's going to be like, because I'm a user too. So how do we leverage these amazing technology to create some really amazing user experiences? So over time has been adding more and more functionality. Function calling became available, better models like 4 and 4.0, and have a much more
Hmm.
thinking processing power and things like that. The concept of agents, being realized, right, in like literally within the last 2 years. And so adding more and more functionality to it, being able to create artifacts in real time, right? And we saw Anthropic come with, show the concept of artifacts, and we saw OpenAI as well bring Canvas and all those things. And so, how do you bring those things you bring those elements into your everyday application? And so that's how this application was my little experiment, a little lab, as you will. And you saw it evolve, Cris, over
Man,
the last
Hmm.
I
the
mean,
last few
yeah,
years,
every step
right?
of it too.
Right?
And well, and you, there's a couple of important points that both of you have mentioned, and Ronnie, I'd like you to speak to it. But first of all, function calling. We're throwing this around like people know what we're talking
Yeah.
about, and it is such an important part of tool use. Actually, function calling versus tool. I mean, there's some
How are
nuance
they
in
different?
between there. Yeah, go ahead and
Well,
yeah, address that.
yeah, well, they started, I remember, so when OpenAI first launched that functionality in their API, it was called functions, right? It was function calling. But I think they soon quickly realized it was more just than functions. It's not just about calling a quick function. It's really a way to expose all the type of tooling that you might be able to run on your end. And so I think the changing the name also opened the eyes to a lot of us. Like, yeah, it's tools. It's much more than just being able to
Yeah,
call
because you
it.
can
So
you can
function.
build tools to be much more powerful. A function is something that just kind of
Absolutely.
does math or something. So yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. I
yeah,
think the connotation itself just kind of opened up a lot of our
yeah.
the different ways of thinking about it. So
Tools is
that
a
made it.
very big superset of functions.
Yeah, and then it's funny because I remember after a conference a couple of I think it was like a year and a half ago. um, I went to the conference, saw an AI conference. I saw some really amazing things. Everybody all these different companies are building these amazing tools and everything. And I was really psyched. Came back to the hotel room. It's like, oh my God, I need to build something, right? You get that urge, and I started thinking about, well, how do I apply this into FileMaker? And it dawned on me how really smart these models have gotten, where they were able to start creating entire workflows where they can use not only determine which is the right tool to call, but also understand what the input and output of each one of them is and be able to stitch them together into custom workflows to address the particular ask of the user, right? And I remember at that time I created a version of this that would talk to the FileMaker admin API and be able to like work as your admin assistant. And so I exposed um, Claris Connect flows to help me do those things. So those flows became tools as well. Expose those, and again, the concept starts building up, and you start seeing, well, what's possible and kind of where we might be going. And so this all ended in me showing these things off at Engage, and a lot of people got excited and were asking me for the file. So I'm announcing here that I'm going to be releasing that file today.
Sweet.
Yes, should be hopefully by the time people hear this recording, it will be up in Claris community, fully open, so you'll be able to download it, look at it.
I'll post a
Forgive
link
my
in
code.
the show notes.
Yeah, yeah. Let's please post a link in the show notes. Understand? I just told you there's some code in there that's 2 years old. So a lot of people have helped out cleaning up a little bit. It was a much larger task than I thought it would be, so it took me a little bit longer. But I think I'm hoping that with this file and with what Michael is releasing as well, I think the communities can see some examples of how they might be able to apply this to their own applications. This is the way I learned to code, looking at other people's code, and I think I'm hoping that this helps out the community.
So you guys have both ruined everybody's weekend. So because you can get Michael's file. So Michael, tell us where people can get your file as well too, so that they can bookend, or they can do Ronnie's and yours at the same time and compare and contrast.
And
I
we're
have
gonna have
mine.
one.
Mine's been submitted to the marketplace, but I haven't heard back yet. So should be getting back.
Ronnie is on it.
But
I know a guy.
Exactly.
you can go to my website, empowereddatasolutions.com, and there's the files on there for you to download. And in fact, I may just put access to it right on the front page, so it's easy to find.
Nice.
but then so you can download that there, and also I do have GitHub repos that are if you want to look at some of the code like the real-time API and things like that. I have that in the file as well that you can go and look at that at the stuff that's not FileMaker, that's the JavaScript and that kind of stuff. If you want to get a little more techie on that kind of stuff, but you don't need to.
Well,
I highly recommend it. 'Cause by the way, I used exactly that. I was trying, for a while, I tried to do the implementation of real-time API.
Well,
And I really
Ronnie, I
stole
remember
Michael's
yours
repo.
before that. Let's
Yeah.
talk about that. Like, so on your journey with that, Ronnie, what
Mhm.
before real-time API and why? So we've said that a few times. So let's back up a second here.
Yeah, how
Real-time
to do it, right?
APIs
Because
is
that's a web viewer thing or web direct, no, web viewer
Reviewer.
connection that using a new feature, a new hook that came in which
that
version?
was last year.
Not
Last
recent.
year,
Yeah.
before real-time API, you could use voice. As a matter of fact,
Mhm.
OpenAI probably all started with Whisper. They
Hmm.
still have an open source. They're not just foundation models; they have open source models as well too. One of which is Whisper, which if you want to have voice control, both directions, have it talk and have it be able to listen and process. You can use the open source Whisper. So it
Yeah.
began with Whisper. But Ronnie, what was the challenge with the Whisper API? And also, by the way, for those of you that talk to your ChatGPT on your phone, the early stages of voice, there was something kind of interesting with that
Mhm.
needed to be solved. What was that, Ronnie?
Yeah, so just like everybody else, I started with just a regular chat, text chat and
Mhm.
everything. And like you said, Whisper comes along and just disrupts everything. You have a very high quality speech to text technology out there, which they
Yeah.
release as open source. I mean, it's really really good.
Amazing.
And so you're thinking, well, let's see how we can leverage this. And I discovered very quickly that. Uh, I prefer prompting or interacting with the AI through voice, and because there's big differences between how you interact with these tools, typing versus speech. When you're
Mhm.
typing, I've realized I'm thinking too much about the structure of what I'm writing, right? What is it I'm trying to say? I'm thinking about the sentence structure and things like that. I
Mhm.
don't give as many details as I do as when I'm speaking. This is natural. Like this is what humans are built for. And so I really wanted to be able to take that and build that in. So they also released the API to do text to speech and speech to text, and it's like, oh, let's go ahead and do that. And it's just amazing. The user experience is just so much better. But at the time, we were still relying basically to walkie-talkie. So you click like, listen to me now.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I
Over.
stopped talking. Yeah, over. Roger that. All right, and then but it's basically just another layer on top of your text chat, right? It's just you have another layer that's doing the speech to text and text to speak, but underneath it, you're still doing the same chat type of interface. It's just another layer taking care of that voice on it, and
So
it
what's the
works. It's
problem
really
with
really good.
walkie-talkie though? What's the problem? Just so that people can kind of identify
The
the evolution there.
Well, one is the flow, right? We don't talk like that. Like we don't really, hear talking about walkie-talkie. It is a bit artificial. This is not the way we talk. We sometimes interrupt each other. There's a different flow when we're having a conversation, and so you lose that there, and you can lose your train of thought. Sometimes you just pause in the middle of something, and so it's not as natural as a regular conversation. And for a while that was fine. And then OpenAI released their real-time API, which just allows for some really amazing experiences. I mean, we first start experiencing it through their what's called advanced voice interface that they've released for ChatGPT, which is really amazing. You start using it. Yeah, there you go.
This is one
Nice.
other
And
thing I'd throw out, by the way, just
yeah,
not to interrupt, but like typically people speak much faster than they can type.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
that's another really big factor. Just thought I'd throw
Great
that
Yeah.
in for a
call.
second too.
Yeah, and we give a lot more, detail, which is the other thing. So I started using. I remember I was part of the preview of the advanced voice and started testing that out, and it's like, wow, like this is it. Like this is really the interface that I want to be using. And so how do I bring that in? Originally, the API was required a server and everything, as it's all kind
Mm.
of WebSockets, and it was a bit complicated, a little bit over my head. But then they created a web RTC version of that. And guess what? FileMaker Web Viewer supports WebRTC. And so, right, again, talking about having the platform, having all the tools that you need in order to take advantage of these technology. And then Michael did an amazing job of creating like all the code required to run this within a web viewer, and I totally stole his code,
Yep.
and it works
Well, I
beautifully.
coded it, so you didn't steal it from me. So.
Oh, that's funny. You stole ChatGPT's code?
Yeah, but I strongly believe, like, at least for me, and I think for a lot of people, like, this is the way I want to interact with it, right? I want to interact in a very natural, very fluid manner, the way I would interact with another person. Let it figure things out for me. I don't want to have to pause. I don't have to think about structure or anything like that. Let me just talk fluidly, and let's figure it out together, right? It's a
Ronnie
more
and
collaborative
Michael,
experience.
I have a question for you. When you guys are
Yeah.
talking to the agent and you interrupt it,
Uh-huh.
do you apologize for interrupting?
There's what's his name? Sam Altman was talking about that it's costing millions of dollars for people being polite to AI because they're prompting all the
Stop
please and
saying
thank you.
thank you.
Stop
Yeah.
saying thank you.
Because you're like,
So-
the amount of compute power it takes just to
I
generate
get
the
that, but
response is crazy.
but that's actually Sam's fault because he could just put a little hook in that says if someone says thank you, don't go process it.
Ignore it. Right.
Yeah.
What I've done lately is when I ask questions, I no longer bother with the question mark at the end. It's just a wasted character, and I have to hold the shift key down.
That's profound. Well, I mean, I gave up exclamation points. Ronnie knows this
That-
for
yeah.
Oh, yeah,
for
you're for a year.
New Year's 2 years ago. So I'm just trying to save
No
the
one
planet.
noticed, Cris.
That's because it was so quiet because I
Yeah.
wasn't exclaiming enough. That's why they didn't
Well, this is
notice.
just you still use them when you speak, FYI. So
And by the way, real-time API, because of what we're just talking, I mean, we're kind of joking about compute costs, but that is really expensive for them to be able to do, and therefore they pass that cost on to the customer. So
Yeah.
what Michael did where he obfuscated the use of real-time, well, just to be clear, the real-time API is the part that's doing the talking. So you can kind of see at the top of the funnel of in his multi-agent system that the one is doing the talking. And none of the other ones need to. So you can mitigate the cost that way. Interestingly enough, let's explore a little bit of the multi-agent system that you talked about there too, Michael, because that on
and
its
I want to ask
own
about cost.
go ahead. Yeah. Dig in on cost.
So like not to interrupt but that's my job. I get to interrupt because I'm the
You're
stupid
welcome.
one here.
Thank
You
you.
guys, the demo that I'm going to be releasing is like, way behind this, but the stuff I'm trying to do are things that mere mortals can implement. I looked at Michael's code. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm going to have to drink a lot of coffee to understand this. So my question to you, Michael, is kind of expensive is one thing, but like if a user uses it fairly heavily for an hour, what you've built, what would that cost in ATN fees?
The most expensive part of it is when it's speaking. And
Mm-hmm.
so I built it in a way where it produces it as text, and actually when it produces all that formatted stuff, it's using Markdown, which they're really good at. And I have a library that takes the Markdown, turns it into HTML. So in the web viewer, it just shows the HTML with the H1 tags and all that kind of stuff. If you know that, just formatting. But so that saves part of the time and part of the money, because all that stuff that you're typing out, you don't need to say. And the other part of that is that I prompt in a way to tell it to be concise. Don't talk a lot. But it's about 24. It comes out to about 24 cents per minute of it speaking. So if you had it running like all the time, where it was just talking and talking and talking, like I do, like when I'm driving, a lot of times I'll have ChatGPT going and I'm interviewing it and having it tutor me about all different kinds of stuff and AI and everything else. So I'm constantly having conversations with it while I'm driving. Okay, tell me about that. Okay, give more information about this. And
those don't actually cost extra though. So if you just have your regular old $20 a month account, it's
right. And so
but
for this, it's I mean, I'll use it heavily while I'm doing testing and all that kind of stuff and doing a bunch of different runs with it, and it may cost me $7 for the day.
That's kind of what I was looking for.
A whole lot of testing. And then you can take that, mixing the two, you can actually, with the Whisper, you can actually reduce it even further, because Whisper is really cheap. So you can put this into a text-only mode where it will listen to you, but it will generate text. And then you have Whisper do the audio for the thing.
That
then
connects to that other little thing that I showed, right? You can read much faster than you can listen.
Right.
but
Yeah,
you
So
can speak faster than you can type. So that actually sort of really maximizes what humans are designed
and you
to
can
do.
think
Yeah.
faster than you can speak, which
Well,
is
you
where
can.
like the Neuralink evolution.
Yeah, if you have, there's a really big issue with
Look.
this for people who have ADHD, Cris. We can
What's that?
speak,
What were we talking
those
about
of
again?
us with ADHD, we can speak much faster than we can think, and it's a problem.
Yeah, I know it is.
All right, I cut you off. You were asking another great question a minute ago.
No, actually that is thrilling. And in all seriousness, the next thing here is brain computer interface, which sounds space age and crazy, but like literally there's technologies out there allowing people to be able to interact with computers with just their thought. I mean, it's literally, and there was just
Yeah.
FDA approval actually just
Yeah.
last month, which is totally insane. So we'll have that podcast next year.
I'm
We'll
excited
start
about
thinking
that,
about
but
it. We'll
I-
be thinking.
Yeah,
we'll be
we won't
we'll
even have
think
to
of that.
record it. We'll just
We
think
don't have to
everything.
record it. Yeah. But I
Now-
want to ask Michael a bit. Like Michael, if somebody out there downloads your file and wants to kind of plug it into their own data, what does that look like, right? Because I
Well,
haven't been able to dig that big. I haven't dug deeper into yours into that point.
in the documentation that you can ask about, I do have a walkthrough that just puts the copy and paste in order kind of steps, in there. How you have to do that. But I am planning on releasing this as an add-on that you can drop into your own file,
wow.
and
Nice.
so it can figure out, get the DDL from that file and know what execute SQL it can run, that kind of stuff. So but on top of that, I want to emphasize the fact that you don't have to use the real-time API to use this. I took the same code, dropped into a customer's file for a Agentic process that I'm doing for them, and in fact, if I can show my screen one more time real quick, just
Cool.
real quick. I have this button here that's not on the current version, but I'll be releasing
Manual run.
Manual run is, and I can call it something else, I don't know, but so it's a very simple script that, well, actually, first let me make one change before I do this, because in my agents here, I have this red, by the way, because just to say, hey, this is expensive. You can use
So that's the model.
that's the model number that's being used to do this, and the real-time preview is what we're doing with that. So, but if I go and choose, for example, 4.1. Where's just a regular? This one's fine for the 4.1. So I changed it to a regular text model here instead of the real-time model. And then on this file, on this button, if I turn on the script debugger, I'm running the actual tool right here, call agent. That's the tool that the main agent uses to call a sub-agent. So it's just a simple script that takes agent name and prompt. And so I'm using that here.
So great.
To I pass it the name of the agent, which you can see down here is empowered core, and I have show me a bar chart for the top 5 companies by total dollar amount, same thing prompt I gave before. So I'm calling the script, the master agent, from a script the same way that it would call another agent. So this is all you have to do in order to take this functionality. If you copy in the scripts and stuff that you're needed, as far as your and I'll show you here. It's the call agent and the subscripts related to it, and then different tools you want to copy in, that kind of thing. But if I close this, all I did was in that script was send it a thing, and it does some of the stuff you could do on the server, so it doesn't flash around while it's thinking and that kind of stuff. But either way, it runs that code, it gives me this, and I just had it give me a dialogue at the end of that script with whatever text would have come back from
the result, basically.
From the result. So in other words, if it said done, it said I created the bar chart or whatever. So I just had this process, this thing that you could run from any, if you want to have a chart, some kind of a text field on your layout or whatever, to run this process, say, hey, give me such information, then it would do that without you having to worry about doing all the speech stuff or worry about the price of the cost of using the speech stuff and everything like that.
So this is what you're saying is this is very modular. Like you can just take certain functionalities, plug that out, or tap into just that one thing, expose it into whichever way you want it in your application,
Right.
and it'll still work as because they are built as agents and as easy to call upon just by natural language.
Right. So I tried to build
That's
everything
fantastic.
very modular as far as this, like the call tools and all that kind of stuff.
That is
Is
fantastic.
and then here's all of our tools
Mhm.
down here as far as the selecting a window like you talked about or navigating. So
And
all of
that's
that is
and that's a perfect example of what I was asking about before. And I think that's an important thing to call out too is the multi-agent systems. So
Mhm.
what really probably has been the thing that's evolved most in 2025 in the AI community are multi-agent systems. And Michael just showed an excellent example of it. It's essentially having an agent itself be a tool to other agents.
Mhm.
So that things get really meta at that point. But then what you end up doing is, as Michael showed, really just designating certain agents to do certain tasks. So you can kind of think of it as a team, and you have specialists on the team, and that the project manager of the team says, "Well, this is the problem. I'm going to need this agent over here, this agent, and these other tools, whatever it is. And then you guys go do this and then come back to me and let me know when you're done. I'll determine whether or not the project is completed. If not, you'll keep doing it. If so, I'll go let the client know, so to speak, that we're done and give them the results of the whole
Yeah,
process.
so this is like having like 100 project managers, each of which has 1,000 interns and also QA people and coders and
Bingo.
other things, right? So you get a lot of specialties that they can call,
Yep.
and then the QA people can say, is this actually what you wanted or not? Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway.
and then another nice thing about the tool calling, so like that, and something else I stole from Ronnie is the validation. So, in fact, I don't want to take up too much time on this, but I think this is really important. The when you're setting up tools, you have JSON schema, which is just JSON that is a definition of other JSON. So you have JSON that says, here, if I have script parameters, this is what I need for you to give me in order to call this tool. So for example, this is the one for execute SQL, and I have different arguments. So this is an array of arguments like what you would pass to execute SQL as the other parameters like ID, ID for the contact or whatever. And then here's the field separator, the query, the row separator, all the things you need for execute SQL. And so I wrote this to make it easier to edit these things, but it has all of these different possibilities that you can use for validation, saying that it needs to be this type of thing, or it needs to be one of these values, or something like that, and what's the default value for if it's optional. So all of that is used to validate what the LLM sends me. So the LLM says, "Hey, I want to run this FileMaker script with this parameter." First thing I do is I pass it against in an API against this stuff here, and it comes back human readable saying you're missing this parameter, or this parameter can only be one of these 5 items, or whatever it is. And that API is nice because it just gives me the text back, and I just go, "Okay, you want to run this? Is that right? Okay, this is what it said. Oh, yeah, I'm missing this parameter. Okay, well here's the end." And it will just pass it back and forth until it gets the right parameters and to call it. Not to mention the fact that it does a much better job of calling it the first time because you're telling it this is what you need to call this tool. So that right there is one of the secret sauces for this kind of functionality, because you're telling it up front, this is what I'm expecting, and I'm validating that, saying, this is one of the tools you can call, and yes, this is the correct parameters. Now I'll pass it off to run that script with this parameters. And by the way, as you notice, I named my scripts by these tools by the name of the tool is the name of the script. So all I'm doing is perform script by name and passing the parameter through.
Another native FileMaker tool that
Right.
makes agents even easier.
Almost as we built it for it, right? It's like, but I love that the validating the JSON. That is a very important component here, and I don't know, maybe that should be something native. I don't know.
I think so.
Taking bets.
It's been done in other platforms. Why bother? I think you're giving hints, though, aren't you? What else do we have today? Each of us are going to do demos that long, right? But I think, Cris, you do have something to show. I'm not sure about if you do, Ronnie.
Oh no, Ronnie has something to show.
Ronnie has
You
something to
know,
show? I get
let-
it backwards?
But
Yeah.
well, I don't want to go after Michael. Well, I was going to show just my own version of this, but again, Michael has gotten a lot more sophisticated. But I can show it anyways. It's just people just have an idea of what the
Please
what
do.
they'll
Well,
get.
yeah, because you're giving it away. You can kind of set some expectations with folks, right?
Yeah.
What they're going to
I
see.
love the.
So sure.
I was shocked to hear, Michael, that you can, and I'll interrupt Ronnie where you're setting everything, that this is actually something that you thought about really implementing as opposed to just like, hey, this is a proof of concept that shows what can be done, as opposed to like, no, this is something you can actually really use. It's
Absolutely.
almost all black box, copied in. It's just going to work.
Mhm.
So you don't have to play with it. I love that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
commend you for that.
I'm using it with a couple of my customers where
Yeah.
it's just like the main difference between what we could do and what we can do now is we used to have to
Yeah.
stop when a human had to make a decision. Now we don't have
Right.
to. Now the LLM makes the decision and we keep on moving. So
I'll be adding this to the curriculum for the AI classes I've been teaching for sure.
Nice.
All right, let me. All right, I recorded mine because I know how fickle the demo gods are, but I can show the application itself. But I'll go ahead and run this real quick. Hey, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thank you. How can I assist with the app or any FileMaker related task today?
Do you know who I am?
You're Ronnie Rios. I've got your preferences in mind, so I'm here to help you with anything related to the app or the FileMaker platform. Let me know
All
what
right.
you need.
It's pronounced Rios, but I'll let that pass.
Got it. Ronnie Rios. Thanks for letting me know.
Whoa.
I'll make sure to remember that. How can I help you today?
Well, I like to ask some really intelligent questions about the solution, but I honestly don't know a lot about the schema. So do me a favor, bring up a diagram of all of the tables of the system with the relationships between them.
Here's a diagram showing all the tables and how they're related. Let me know if there's anything you'd like to dive deeper into.
Yeah, give me a list of all of the accounts with their revenue.
Here's a list of all accounts along with their revenue. Let me know if you'd like to filter or analyze this data further.
Yeah, it's probably too many. Why don't we do this? Let's focus on the top 5 accounts by revenue.
Here are the top 5 accounts by revenue. Let me know if you'd like any more details or further analysis on these.
Yeah, I like to drill down into, I think, con code. Create a chart of all of the opportunities for that customer across the stages of the deal.
Here's a chart showing the opportunities for can code across different deal stages. Let me know if there's anything specific you'd like to explore further.
No, I think that'll do it for today. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Feel free to reach out anytime you need more help. Have a great day.
Keep it short.
So I
I
mean,
don't know
if
what you're
it's
talking
supposed
about.
to
That was
cost,
awesome.
does it cost extra money if ChatGPT says thank you to you and have a nice day?
Probably.
Anyway, that's really sweet. So it looks like you've got this is a web viewer chart, but the other windows look like regular old FileMaker lists. Like it did a
They're not.
query and showed you a
That's
found set. They're
everything
not?
you saw. Everything you saw here is actually web viewers.
Okay,
There's not
okay,
a
okay.
single. Everything here, including
Yeah.
that list, is just a. It's really just HTML.
Yeah, that would make it a lot easier, frankly.
Yeah.
Because they can return really nicely formed HTML, but giving it like a set of found records in FileMaker is hard. But yeah, with some of the stuff Michael showed, it could probably do that too. You can get, you could get SQL back that gives it a list of the keys, and then you could go,
Right.
Make a
absolutely.
global-based relationship or something and find those records.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, this is cool.
Yeah, it's just to make to me it was just to make it easier. Again, I was kind of pushing on what I could do, but I would see this more as I probably wouldn't use this with only web viewers, I probably have a mixer between, regular FileMaker layouts. When I say regular, I mean, deterministic, kind of predefined
Yeah.
layouts, and then some things here that are completely dynamic that I'm going to use at the moment, bring it up. Okay, I answered the question. I'll keep this floating here for a while, and in conjunction with the other tools and layouts that I have, is probably the most efficient use that I would see it.
I'm
For
trying to
sure.
think of like super everyday use cases of parts of this because I
Hmm.
don't think you have a lot of users regularly running reports like you did. They wouldn't use
Yeah.
much of their time on any given day, probably coming up with a chart like that because they're using the same ones all the time. Now you probably
Hmm.
for sure are going to have some executives that want to like look at the data and they're going to want to go way beyond that. They're going to want to do
Hmm.
things like, compare the trend of products in my top 20 customers for
Yeah.
products released between this date and this date that are in this price range. Find a relationship by category of this blah, blah, blah. You can get AI can
Right.
Yeah.
do way more complex stuff.
Well,
Yes.
you
And
say that they run the same charts all the time, but why do they? Because that's what we've provided them. That's what they have
No,
available.
Because
no, that's because that's what their KPIs are. There's two reasons for it.
well,
One of them is what we built for them, but we built for them whatever they want us to do.
Yeah.
But like if you're if
so,
you're you know if you have a KPI, this is the chart you need. But this chart here is
yeah.
a really simple thing to do in
Yeah.
FileMaker.
Yeah.
But to a large degree, though, I don't. We can't just dismiss that part. To a large
Yeah,
degree, our users are running things because that's what we deterministically built into the system for them to run. If you
yep,
really gave them, actual
Well,
free
mhm.
will,
Yeah.
release the user, let them do whatever they want.
Mhm.
Then, in
Yeah.
fact, they might need. We might get into the
Yeah.
nuances and the edges. I
yeah,
think
yeah,
that's
yeah.
probably
Yeah,
what the
but
things
even
are.
I
So.
can,
even KPIs, they are short lived. So your KPIs might be just for this quarter, even for this month or whatever, right? And so you might have charts that
yeah,
you're following this week because like this is what's important. We got to make sure that the inventory is at this level. We've got to make sure that utilization is at this level, and we're keeping track of that. But next month,
yeah,
I
yeah,
really
yeah,
don't care. I'm gonna go. That's gonna go away. My focus is going to be something else. So the business changes really, really quickly, right?
yeah.
And the pace of change is just accelerating. So we so far we users are constrained to the things as developers that we build because it is deterministic. That does no longer, the shackles have been taken off.
Yeah.
That is not necessarily true anymore.
Can you stop sharing your screen so we can
Oh
see
yes,
each
so
other's
sorry.
faces better?
Yes.
Michael, you hit on something earlier that I really loved, and it's something I've been playing with too, and that is you've saved a list of prompts, if you will, that are known to work.
Right.
And so this is a use case that I think is more realistic, maybe, where you can give the user like these reports that we know work, and then you can throw that report with any set of data that you want, and you know the results is going to be right. Because some of the queries that are going to give you are going to be wrong. You'll ask it for something and it won't give you the correct data, and you
Or
can't
too
afford that.
complex.
Yeah. And that happens much less in the 4.1. But it was kind of an issue with previous models from the tests that I've been doing, and that's a reason to not use this for sure, and until it gets better to do that. But with the agent process, you can have it double check. But
And also, by the way, it's not all about just visualization. This isn't a charting
Yeah.
tool or a report tool.
Yeah.
There's all the CRUD operations in there too. So you could
Yes.
right,
literally
right,
just
right.
say, go find these and update, the statuses or
Yeah.
something like that too. Just
But
for
it's
what
kind of like
people think
walking
about it.
into a grocery store and seeing 400 types of toothpaste. It's like I have no idea which one to pick.
Yeah.
I don't even see the ones that I've bought before still here.
Hmm.
You can't use that's not useful to users. You want to
Well, the
go in and
outcomes
you
are.
only want to see like 50.
Yeah, all the user needs to know is the outcome that they desire, and then they just
Yeah.
express that to the agent. And if you really think about this, I mean, it's the same thing with like providing, an agent interface for any experience, and that is that we don't have to go learn an application, learn the steps, learn the menu items, and all the things.
Right,
You
right,
just
right.
just say what you're trying to do, and then the agent goes and figures all that stuff out.
I
And I
get that,
think
but
that
the point I'm trying to make though is that you can't give the user in a lot of these situations unlimited choice. You have to actually direct it to say, here's the things that we know you're likely to do, and you can
well,
customize any of
there's
them and you can
there's
add
only
anything
certain
to it.
well, there's only certain data sources or applications that they have access to, and then the actions that are available or the tools that are available within those applications are
Yeah.
limited as well. Their permissions are certainly limited.
There
And
you
by the
go.
way,
That's definitely.
let's
That's what I'm talking
let's
about, though.
double click on, but that's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
So let's just double click on permissions for a second,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I think there is a widely misunderstood, a grossly misunderstood concept that somehow agents are bypassing security. Ronnie, please speak
No.
to that.
Yeah, absolutely not.
I don't know why
Yeah.
people would think everyone's so
How could they?
reckless doing this, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just as
Yeah.
Michael said, all these tools are they're running scripts. These are regular FileMaker scripts. And so that means
in
that
a
they're
user
still
session,
FileMaker
in an
in the
permissions.
user
authenticated
in
user
the
session.
current user session, in the current user session. And so they are running with the exact same privileges that the current user has. And so if that script is set up to run as that user, then that's still the permission to have.
Right.
If you set up that script to run as full access, then that's a whole other thing.
That's on you.
But it cannot, that's on you. But if, as a developer, if you've implemented the FileMaker security, right, following all the guidelines that we've been talking about for decades, then the AI has no more access than the current user has absolutely none more. It is only able to access the data that the user has access to. It can only run the scripts that the user has access to with those exact same permissions.
Yeah.
It cannot bypass and do things that it can't. That the
I
user
never
can't
even
do.
heard or would have thought that an agent would have more access than a user would have.
It
But
is a
There is a
people are thinking it.
caveat.
widely held misconception. And by the way,
okay.
also the other applications that you have that the agent has access to, not just FileMaker, because you're doing API calls that require authentication in those cases as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Michael,
yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
There is a caveat to that, in that there's a lot of developers out there that use security through obscurity. Where they can't get that layout, and so they can't see that data. But they're not actually using the actual FileMaker security to limit it what they can see. So now, if you use the tool, I have a tool in there, the Data API tool, that you could use instead of the execute SQL, and then it could only go to the layouts that you have, given them permission for. Again, permission not in your navigation script. So it's like
none of those users listen to this podcast, so I think we're safe.
So just want to make sure that you're actually locking it down, because that is a requirement.
Absolutely.
Well, if you're doing it wrong, then the agent's going to do it wrong. Like you're just exposing the same risks that you did to humans if you're doing it that way. So
Test. The other thing you got to do. I'll make another point. Having really played with this and taught it, I'm not going to build regular FileMaker reports anymore. I'm done.
Same.
I'm not going to go in and make a layout that's a list view that has sub summaries and stuff like that.
And that's because those are the most deterministic things that we do in
that's
FileMaker,
not why.
or create those. That is why. That is exactly why.
It can be your reason, but it's not mine, Cris.
But you no longer have to do that. Those are actually a restriction with old programming paradigms. So we don't need to do those anymore. It's actually, frankly,
different. I mean, I think there's going to be KPIs that people are going to want forever.
Oh, your KPIs. Yeah.
Or I hate that term.
Okay.
There's going to be things people are going to want to know about the database forever.
What you're zeroing in on that is a good point, and that is that there are some outcomes that are rigid. There are some, like, as a matter of fact, if you built an agent system that just allowed a person at work to be able to express themselves and do whatever they want, ultimately what you'll end up finding out is that person probably does like 15 things over and over again all year long, and then they're at certain different intervals and time frames. So those are rigid. Those things they need to do are those outcomes are going to be rigid. But like, let's say they're just walking into a meeting, it's a one-off or whatever they need. They're going to be able to express what they need in that one ephemeral moment, and it's going to be able to react, and then that just kind of disappears and goes away. So there are also times when that occurs as well. So
in the same way, we all use ChatGPT, right? Like, Michael, you were talking about it. I use it to learn Greek. I use it. You and I, Cris, learned it to use it for our pets to keep information. Ronnie uses it for all of his collections of various Star Wars toys.
And coffee recipes.
Yeah, and coffee recipes. Yeah.
That's a whole other episode. But
you have to get. He has a filter machine that has 400 steps because he has to get that exact right grain, and he keeps all of his coffee in a room with a precise humidity of 46.2471%. He and I were talking about it earlier.
That's a bit off, but total measuring total dissolved solids and extraction percentage and all that. Yeah, all that stuff.
What's the coffee you were drinking earlier? You have that still? Or you
what's brewing over there?
I'm almost done, but this was an espresso tonic with a little bit of lemon honey, double shot of espresso, and
we're taking an aside
water.
here. Espresso tonic water and espresso. I've heard about that.
It is. It is fantastic. It's a great summer drink.
Lemon,
It's
honey,
sweetener
and what
everyone.
else?
So it's lemon honey, double shot of espresso, and some tonic water, and it's just
Hmm.
really fantastic. I have some.
Fever
I
tree
was able
tonic
to.
or
Was that?
fever tree tonic?
This one is actually yes. This was a fever tree
That's the good stuff,
today.
man.
That's really good. Yeah.
So we've reached the but wait, there's more part of the podcast episode here. So one of the things that we talked about was tools. I mean, the lifeblood of agent capabilities are what tools we make available to them, right? Like they can't just go out and do whatever they want. Yeah, we have to provide what's possible to them. One of the challenges though with tools and really data sources as tools to be able to provide context to these agents is that all the different contexts could be different. Like you could have like a SQL environment, or you could have a FileMaker environment, and they sort of format or provide their data in different ways. And then you're doing a lot of programming. If you have, let's say you have 20 different data sources and they're all disparate systems, you would have to do a lot of programming to be able to communicate with those. And so one of the more fascinating things, Ronnie, that has come out in really it's not even 6 months at this point, is a protocol to unify that. Can you talk a little bit about what that is? And then I think Michael's got a surprise for us on that.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
So Anthropic a little while back, literally it hasn't been a year, released a proposal of a way to kind of unify the way, or kind of everybody get to um, expose these resources and tools in the same way, right? So if we all speak the same language, interoperability will be a lot better and move forward to it. And they call it MCP, which is short for model control protocol. And basically, it's just a way of how to expose these tools to AI in the same way. And so if we all speak the same language, then right, to make this a lot easier. And I remember when they first came out, it was I've been keeping a close eye to development with it, but it was a kind of chicken and the egg type of thing where it's fantastic, but the value really is if everybody uses it. And Cris and I, you and I were talking about, I think the pivoting moment, right, was when OpenAI said that they were supporting it. And I think it's been a huge flood, right?
And
Everybody.
that was just the week of Engage, just to let people know.
Yeah,
I mean,
I know.
so,
That was
so
just this short while ago, right? But it's been an explosion after that, and it's becoming the de facto way of how tools are exposed to AI, to the point where, right, even Google announced that with their release of another protocol, that they're going to be using MCP as the backend, right, as the kind of building block for it as well. So I think the industry is coalescing into exposing, right, these tools to AI through this
yeah,
this kind of during.
the timeline there is fascinating. It was actually
It's really,
November
yeah, it was released in
of
November.
2024 that Anthropic came out. They literally just blog post and said, like, this is something we probably need. So the problem that I stated before is the problem they were stating that they were trying to solve. They came out with MCP after 3 or so months. The moment, that epicenter, or that explosion moment that Ronnie was just talking about, was when actually OpenAI came out and said, look, we were working on our own protocol as well, but we're going to acquiesce to the MCP approach and use model context protocol for everything. And then the whole industry was like, oh, well, now we don't have to create our own or wait for everybody to create their own. Let's actually just adopt MCP. And now it's everywhere. And actually, for those that are for some reason still listening to this part of the podcast, but are not compelled by how important having a protocol is, believe it or not, you are experiencing a context, a CP of your own, and you don't even know how important it is. And that was when TCP actually came out. TCP, unifying a protocol, is what made networking computers even possible back in the day. For all the kids that are, well, there's no kids listening, all the geezers listening, you remember when that happened. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
by the way, when you said
MCP,
MCP, I'm like, Tron.
Oh no, is there a Tron? Is there a Tron reference?
It's a Tron.
What's the Tron?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh no.
That's the
So,
that's like the master thing at the end, I think. Anyway.
So then now the challenge is though, so Ronnie, if I want to connect to an MCP server, so the MCP, much like in TCP, there is a client and server relationship in these exchanges. So there's MCP servers and then there's MCP clients. So for example, could our FileMaker systems be an MCP server providing data to a client?
Absolutely. It can also be an MCP client at the same time, but as a server, right, we can expose all the as resources, we can expose the tables, right, the entire databases. We can expose tools as scripts as tools, or even custom functions as tools. So it's basically, if you think about it, it's an API for AI, right? It's how to expose resources, how to expose things to AI so that it can use in the best way it believes it should be. It should use them to accomplish a particular task. And obviously we have a ton of data and resources and business logic already in our applications. It makes a lot of sense to expose those that way. And what Michael has done, by the way, like, you don't need MCP. MCP really is great once you start splitting up, the intelligence and the resources in two different places. How do you make those two things talk to one another? What Michael's built is everything is in one place, so he may not need, right, MCP in there. But if he wanted to expose those things to the outside world, to another intelligence, or to get another resource, they need to speak. They need to be. They need to speak the same language, and that's where MCP comes into play. Right? Michael did the exact same thing, but internally, right? He's got his own way of talking, of exposing those scripts, for example, to the large language model.
In addition to providing the protocol and that in the uniformity of the exchange, there's one really interesting thing that's also happening with MCP, and that is that we're able to describe to the agent why this source or why these tools or these actions, whatever it is, are important and relevant to the actions that they might be providing. And that's a big deal. I can say that in some of my own early explorations where I was just like giving data to, I'd like copy and paste data into ChatGPT and see what it would come up with. It was left to its own devices to try to interpret the meaning of the data, for example, by the column names or the index of the data or evaluating the data. And it would kind of have to guess, right? Much in the same way that we we leave it. If you leave, like, a lot of people perceive hallucinations as it just is wrong, it doesn't have the right intelligence, but the reality of it is it has multiple different answers that all could be correct. It's whether or not it fits your question. And so the way that you can dial in the aperture a little bit is by saying, okay, this is actually what this source of information is for.
Source
So
of truth.
if you ever run into a question about finances, this is where you're going to find those answers, that type of thing. So providing that context to the context is an efficiency, a piece of this that actually allows those exchanges to be a lot more efficient. Now, the problem is you have to spin up the MCP server. Michael, is there an easier way to do this than having to manually create these MCP servers when you want to connect to these sources?
Which we don't even know how to do.
Yeah, so what I did was I created two different versions of an MCP server. That, when I say the coding agent and I. So for example, I made this extra agent here that all I did, I didn't give it any information here. I just gave it a couple of tools here, and then I have a Python script running here, which you could. I'm planning on setting this out so it'd be easy to use with like a container, where you can just, it'll be containerized and you can just run this on your server. And then I also have a local version that you could spin up and run locally, because Claude will use either one. So if I start,
and by the way, Claude in this example, just so we're bringing it all together, is the MCP client in this case, and you're talking about creating an MCP server on the fly that can talk to.
It's funny because it's the reverse, and I had the hardest time to wrap my head around that for that reason. But they call the LLM that is using the service the host. And then
the LLM in that case,
and then like FileMaker in this would be the client, and then what's connecting the two is the server. And I had to bang my head against that. But if I look here, I can see this FileMaker and MCP, and I see these same tools here that I see over here. And in fact, if I were to close Claude, and I'm gonna change this so that I don't have to stop the server in the future. But right now, I just stop the server here. I'm gonna add two more tools here, and I'm gonna leave the layout so I make sure I committed that. And then I'm gonna just run that again, and it's gonna go through and say that it's running again. And then, if the demo gods are willing, then when I open Claude up again and I look to see, and there we go, we have 5 tools now. So we're providing all this functionality. For example, if I were to say, I'll use the same one. Give me, actually, no, give me the top 10 products that were sold in 2024 by dollar amount, and how much were sold the previous year in a bar chart. So I don't like typing either, so I use Super Whisper to. So this is running these tools. It got the layouts, and it's looking at the products layout. But again, this is not what it needs to do, because and so it's looking at these different things, but it doesn't really need to do that. What it needs to do is a SQL and get the information there, but it doesn't know that. So now but it says that, okay, I have this information. I'm going to write a SQL query, and so now it has the database. Now it's going to start writing the HTML and stuff for that process. This is all live. It's just doing it on its own. I have no idea what it's going to do because I decided to change the prompt here. But one thing while this is writing this out that I wanted to bring attention to is that this is writing out all the code that you could take and put into a web viewer and FileMaker yourself. So in other words, you could take all this code and then set it up so that it substitutes out your current thing. So you can make a new tool that would do a new type of display or whatever by just having Claude write the code for you. And then here you go. Here's our sales, and give us some other stuff here. So the drill press did a whole lot better than the previous year, et cetera, et cetera. So so this is just by giving Claude, which is just like OpenAI desktop app. This is the Claude desktop app. And because I connected it to FileMaker with that, then it has access to all of those tools, whatever tools I give it. Now this is running on the server because it's using the data API. So it's making a call to the server to do things. So without special extra things, which I've thought about how we might want to do, you can't run it it's not getting client information. In other words, like who's currently signed in and what layout are they on and all that kind of information.
Yeah, like that user context.
The user context that you could get otherwise.
And permissions.
Right, exactly.
But you have, in this case, exposed your FileMaker data as an MCP server, and then allowed, in this case, you're using Claude's IDE, the desktop client, to be the client to connect to that. You're saying, though, that it doesn't carry with it the advantage that FileMaker has to be able to know who the user is and what permissions they have to certain data?
Not off the cuff. I actually thought about adding in where you're add your own credentials to the setup, and in that case, it would log in with to the data API with your credentials, and it would respect those.
So
just to bring expose data, the easy way is to expose data that everybody can see. That's because that's a hard problem to solve.
Yeah, but also to bring it into like a FileMaker metaphor, it's not too different than running a script within FileMaker versus running a script on the server where it doesn't know which user, what all that context and permissions that it might need. So it would be similar resolution at the same time.
Yeah, I have one big question for you, Michael. What's with the second most high-selling product, demolition hammers? What are people using those for?
It's completely random stuff that I had generate. It's a library and I coded something that would generate through vibe coding, generate a bunch of data.
I've done that too. I can drill press I get, but demolition hammers, come on. Anyway, I love sample data a lot.
So we've really touched on a couple of, I'd say probably the powerhouse features of 2025. Here we are halfway through 2025, and it's the year of the agent. So we talked about agents, what they are, and the multi-agent systems. And then also now MCP. These are really the big topics of 2025. And I think the most important part here is that we're talking about these in the context of FileMaker and talking about all the things that you don't need to go out and source to be able to pull these off because you already have them in FileMaker. And now FileMaker is firmly in that conversation about some of the most important and relevant things within AI discussions, and FileMaker can operate there. So super exciting stuff. And now Ronnie, you're gonna have to really get that thing going because Matt puts these podcasts out very quickly. So you said by the time this podcast comes out, well, by the time it comes out, it's going to be in about an hour actually. So you're going to have
No
to
worries.
clean that thing up and make it
I've
available.
been secretly messaging the person who's going to help me
2 hours.
put it on the file. So
2 hours. So there you go. You
We're
got twice
recording.
as much
We're
time.
recording on the 6th of June at 6:30 p.m. my time.
Hey,
so-
don't
oh God,
give
now
up
he's
all
time
our-
stamping too.
Yeah, don't give up all our secrets. But yeah, I think, and I think really, so as far as plugs are concerned, I just want to give you guys a chance to talk again. We'll try to do our best to get the links here in the show notes, but we'll start with Ronnie. Ronnie, where can people find this specifically, and what are some of the things that might be coming that you're working on in the labs too that we might be talking about on future episodes?
So yeah, I'm posting this since this was part of the my Engage sessions. I'm going to be posting it there. So if you go to community.claris.com, go into the Engage section there for my session, that will be part of the content there. So it'll be posted in there. And a couple of people have been asking for it, so I'll be posting it there.
Are those out yet?
Yes, I mean the session entries there in the community are absolutely there, and so
cool.
Presenters can been sharing their content in there. I'm just late to this because it took me a bit longer. But something else I'm working on. I had kind of teased at our training day AI session. I've got this little application that basically is an agentic playground. So it's a place where people could go in and create agents, manage different accounts, put in some instructions for the agents, expose some tools, just to play around and see, kind of just play with the concept of agents, just in a small place, play around with those things, look at the script, something a lot smaller, because what Michael and I are exposing has a lot of moving parts, but how we can just compress this down into kind of the smallest portion that maybe people can start learning around how these things work together. So I want to release that agentic playground in maybe the next week or so and start playing around with that. Yeah.
Awesome. But that's super exciting. And then Michael, again, people can get this on your website, but also Ronnie's going to help accelerate getting this onto Claris Marketplace too, if I'm not mistaken. You said that earlier.
Yes, and I did put the link in the show notes that goes directly to the page where they can download it. If you can add that to the video, and then and I'm going to be releasing an update today within the next hour to have the extra MCP stuff in there as well.
Sweet. And Matt, what about you? You got some classes coming up here. You just were talking about the AI classes.
Yeah, I did a full day AI class in Toronto at the conference with Alexis Allen.
Oh yeah, that's right.
A week ago.
That's right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And that was great. We didn't get this deep in, but it was very hands-on, and everybody left with basically some AI implemented in their solution, which I love.
I hear your class was the most popular.
Well, it's not like I was up against Wim Decord or anything.
You were up against Wim Decord?
Yeah.
Wow.
We tied.
Humble brag. Wow. We tied. Nice job. Damn, dude.
Anyway, well, hey, you know.
Well, what's next? When's your next class?
I've got the advanced class coming up. It's actually Advanced FileMaker plus a lot of AI, starting in a couple of weeks, I think. I can't.
And don't you have some stuff up Claris Academy, or there's some collaboration?
Yeah, there's some free classes coming. In fact, there's going to be 2 free AI classes I'll be doing. One for reporting and one for like data summarization.
Nice.
And then I'm not really sure. I think that, and maybe you and I have talked about this, it seems like the world is changing from Zoom training classes to in-person training classes.
Oh, I hope so. I miss in-person very much. Makes me sad that I don't. Well, actually, I'm doing a couple in-person private trainings in 2 weeks. What am I saying? So yeah, it's nothing like getting in front of people in the classroom and really leveraging that dialogue. So
yeah.
Yeah, I hope to see more of that happen. And then Matt, of course, do you want to give us an update on your on the application for your that you were working on for your funding, your Greek funding that you we were waiting on you for? I'm
Oh,
sorry, you're having
way at
having
the
to
end of
write a
the
check
way
for
at the
some.
end of the podcast. Yeah. So going through the process of what we started when we started the thing here of getting a building permit to build a
Nice.
house in Greece is something I do not recommend. I strongly
Noted.
recommend against building a house in Greece,
I will heed your advice.
where there's enough water behind us now that at least that pain is gone and we only have the future pain coming up. Um, but yeah, it's a thing. But the thing I like to say is while you're waiting for things to happen in Greece, you get to live in Greece. So there's that huge benefit.
Nice. Well put.
Love it.
Well,
And I love it here.
Awesome.
So
yeah, this is fun to be able to visit with you. This is just so we're clear, this is the international Claris Talk AI podcast. Every episode is international, just so everybody knows here. So
this is true.
this is definitely an exciting one. Absolutely appreciate Ronnie. Always great to have you back. These are the most popular episodes whenever you're here. So thanks for gracing us with the extra clicks
So
and
happy.
views.
This is awesome. This
If
is awesome.
anyone was listening in their ears on this one, you can absolutely go back and check out the YouTube version. There's so much cool stuff to see, and Michael did a great job of taking us through his code. So you might want to give it another listen. But really important topics here today. As always, certainly appreciate the opportunity to talk to people about AI. And Matt, I'll throw it back to you to close us out.
I gotta say, this has been so great for me to be able to talk to geniuses like you guys.
And
And
even if you can able to talk to me,
really
and might as well.
empowered like my mission to learn more about it. I cut you off again. And I just want to say thank you to you guys. This is great.
You have and watching your evolution as a trainer. I mean, I don't know if anybody else is really consistently doing bringing AI to FileMaker people at the entry level in particular. You're moving the needle, dude. Like, keep doing it. Really appreciate that very much. I hear feedback on your courses, and so this is all part of the journey. So yeah, this is a lot of fun. Thanks for showing up. And if it's just Matt and I, it's like an old married couple. So it's great to have other people in the room
Wow.
to keep us straight. So
We've been
and
married
then who
over
do you want
30
to say
years,
goodbye?
Chris.
Yeah, exactly. So who do you want to say goodbye to at the very end here, Matt? It's becoming kind of a trope.
Alexi Folger, we love you.
Bye, Alexi. Thanks, everybody. Cheers.
Thanks. Take care.
Yeah.